Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of the SBK Betting Podcast. I hope you're keeping warm wherever you are as we are in the midst of a real freezing point in this early stage of January. It's been a very quiet run of things with race meetings being abandoned. Every day it seems. We had a race meeting at Taunton yesterday over jumps, but a lot of the jumps fixtures are not surviving this cold snap. And the likes of Warwick this weekend's gone. We don't have any racing over jumps today, Thursday the 9th of January. And we're going to have to really keep an eye on the inspections that might be called when it comes to this podcast looking ahead, because we've had to scrap the Warwick Classic Chase, and we're going to look at Kempton. But that racetrack is really monitoring conditions there, and it's looking likely they're going to have inspection details earlier this afternoon. So keep an eye on that with that in mind, as we will pre-previewing a couple of races there, and we'll be keeping our fingers crossed that they'll be okay. Fairyhouse is the racetrack that seems to be very likely to be going ahead this weekend. The Irish seem to get through everything. If you watch Nace on the weekend, they were racing in a blizzard. Not a bother on them at all. And SBK are proud to be sponsoring 4 races there. We have a 25% winnings boost on SBK Dan and Joan Moore Memorial Chase. That's one of 2 offers this weekend, a 20% Saturday Racing ACCA boost, 4 legs, opt-in required. And before we crack on in, TC, we thought that this weekend we would be chatting about racing this weekend, not looking back on last weekend, but I think you're very proud to say that it is well worth listening to your selections when it comes to the racing that you've got another eye on. International racing seems to continue, and it continues with a rich vein and form from your selections. Can you remind us about what we landed on last weekend?
Yeah, we had a winner last week in Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, with Monta Thibeta for the White Stable. A short price favourite, but I was pretty confident. So hopefully a few people followed me in there. I am back in Riyadh for 4 weeks starting on Monday. So there may be 1 or 2 more Riyadh selections if the weather continues this way in the UK.
Yeah, and I say you're quite pleased. Well, not pleased. No one doesn't want to see racing abandoned. But the fact that we've got an extra programme at Chelmsford, we've got plenty of eyeballs on the flat racing. There's a lot to keep our attentions on when it comes to racing on the flat, when the flat is concerned. And I suppose when race meetings are lost over jumps, it means added gain. But Ross, Foss Lass have done absolute brilliant sterling work. I didn't expect it to be that track that be able to gain an extra jumps fixture, because the BHA basically, which I thought, credit to them, sometimes they don't come up with very many good ideas, but they opened up the race courses to essentially say our track is raceable, we can have a fixture. And it was Foss Lass in the depths of Wales that seems to be able to stage one okay. That was a bit of a surprise to me. I'd say it would have been a surprise to all of us.
Yeah, I mean, you'd almost more fancy a summer schedule at Foss Lass to be rained off than Foss Lass ride to the rescue. So no, it's good. And the BHA do get a lot wrong, but when they do things like this, I've looked at the entries; they're really well supported. So hopefully Foss Lass does survive the weather, and we can get some racing on over the weekend. And I would just like to say, a very clever bit of presenting, putting the onus of mentioning Tom's Saudi winner, the name on him, and not trying it yourself. I thought that was very cute, very smart.
Yeah, I know that isn't my forte, but it is part of my New Year's resolutions to improve where that comes from. Anyway, hopefully we get a slightly more simpler names when it comes to this weekend. As I said, the SBK Dan and Joan Moore Memorial Chase is the feature race over in Ireland on Saturday. And I know last weekend we did a day where we were reminiscing on our bets of the year, but I completely forgot that I tipped up Uncle Phil this time last year. I don't know if we've got a 11-2 shout for Willie Mullins in this field of a horse that's looked to be as sort of unexposed as him, but we do have the odd sort of more higher profile horses when it comes to his yard, the likes of Hunter's Yarn being one of them. We've also got Hador, who's on a bit of a retrieval mission, and I feel like this race is kind of filled up with a lot of that type of horse. The likes of American Mike once seemed to be a really exciting prospect for Gordon Elliott, but hasn't really found his level. You've got the likes of the Bangor Doyle for the John Quealy team. Gavin Cromwell's got Pastoreau. Henry de Bromhead's got Let's Go Champ. It's a bit of a mixture, this race. I always feel like it is. The horses trying to sort of regain their confidence, and those that are a little bit on the up. Ross, what do you make of it? 2 mile, 1 furlong. We saw Uncle Phil, as I said last year, go out and make cool at a track that really suits a horse that can show off their jumping.
Yeah, and I think Willie Mullins holds the key again, to be honest, Jess. Hunter's Yarn, I was really impressed by him with what he did last year. Okay, he fell on his chase debut at this track, but he was going to slam Safirua by more than 5 lengths quite comfortably on that occasion. Safirua's not a shoddy rated horse. He's rated 152. Came back to the same track, beat Path de Rue 10 lengths. It could have been 110 lengths. He won very easily indeed. And then went to the Arkle, and I remember that TC, like myself, we both fancied him to run quite a big race at a decent price. And he probably got given a contender for one of the poorest rides of the festival. It was very negative from Darrell Dakin from the off, never really put into it. Then he got hampered at the bottom of the hill as he turned in, hampered again at the second last. You can put a line through that run. He made a return at Cork in the hilly way. Brian Hayes was on. He was weak in the market. It was clearly a race just to put some fitness onto him. He's got top weight, but I just don't think we know quite how good this horse could be. I think he is a genuine 2-miler. Some of these I don't think are. He's proven on soft ground. He's proven around this track. I think he could just be a cut above these. So Hunter's Yarn for me, I think he's got plenty going for him. If that run has given him a little bit of a fitness edge, I'm wouldn't be surprised. I'm not often keen on top weights in these sort of races, but he struck me as sort of horse this year that could mop up these grade 3, grade 2s, a bit like St. Sam does. He might not be a grade 1 horse, but he's a very, very talented horse, and I just don't think we quite know how good he is yet.
Yeah, fair enough. Hunter's Yarn hasn't had a huge amount of racing, just the 14 starts under rules, so that's 6 chase wins. He's only an 8-year-old. I suppose to Ross's point, TC, it's the fact that he does have top weight, a rating of 152. The handicapper hasn't really given him much of a break, considering he was so well beaten last time. They probably know that this kind of plot is probably up Willie Mullins' street. So how do you assess his chances?
I just think he's the most talented horse in the race, Hunter's Yarn. I understand he should be being top weight, but I very much agree with everything that Ross says. I think he's the horse to beat. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes off favourite in this spot. And last time up was clearly just a race to get rid of the rust. The only issue I have with Hunter's Yarn is his jumping. But his jumping is usually poor when he's held up in a race or cannot get to the front, whereas I expect him to be ridden more aggressively. And when he's in front and gets a clear sight of his fences, he tends to be pretty fluent. So hopefully they're pretty aggressive from the outset. At least try to make the running or be very prominent, if not. And from there, I think he's going to be very tough. Usually I do like Gavin Cromwell in races like this. I actually put up a Gavin Cromwell horse in this race last year when you had the winner and I had Cromwell's horse, which I can't remember the name. Something like, let's be clear about it, something like that. But he was 3-1 and 5-4 that day. And he lost. He finished third. There are a couple of horses in here for Cromwell that have a chance of beating Hunter's Yarn, including Midnight It Is, who actually won an SBK-sponsored race last year. So he's just trying to take as much money out of the company as possible. But I think Hunter's Yarn is just the best horse, and I'll be sticking with him.
Yeah, and I've just noticed that Paul Townend is confirmed as riding Hunter's Yarn. Brian Hayes rides the other Willie Mullins horse, which is Hador. So top choice by Paul Townend, who's just riding excellently, as he always is. But in this kind of race, he sort of gets the tactics absolutely spot on. So a lot of confidence behind Hunter's Yarn in this race. I suppose I should probably add in my own selection. It was going to be my next best, but I'll just say it now while we're on the race, and that is Midnight It Is. And this is a Gavin Cromwell horse. So TC, you're kind of nodding along, thinking that is the kind of horse with the kind of profile. Gavin Cromwell also has Path de Rue. Sean Flanagan's on this horse, Midnight It Is, gets on well with him. He just, maybe it's probably a little bit lazy of me, but I was looking for a horse that was similar in Uncle Phil, a horse that likes to go forward, who likes to be ridden in sort of really show off his jumping style. This horse does need to improve. Like, he was rated a lot lower, £20 or lower at this time last year, but he's a horse that's clearly thriving, whereas some of them just need to get their confidence back, as I was saying. He'll handle the ground seemingly, and as TC pointed out, Gavin Cromwell very good at sort of unearthing these types of horses in this type of race. So like Midnight It Is, so that is my next best as well for this race. We've got a couple that we're going to go into now from Kempton. As we mentioned earlier on, we're still not certain about essentially the conditions, what they're facing. It's so cold, -4 up where I am. I'd imagine it might be a little bit warmer there, down more south way. But whatever the case, if it is on, it's going to be extremely testing going conditions. It is a track that normally dries okay, but it will be soft bordering on heavy, so they'll have to really get through it. And we're going to look at the Silviniaco Conti Chase first, which is at 2:42, 2 mile 4.5 furlongs, and fairly disappointed with the amount of runners that we have in this, just the 4 lining up. And we're kind of used to it, I suppose, this type of race always does. But considering that there's such, we're without so much racing recently, maybe it was because there was so much good racing over Christmas that this grade 2 just hasn't attracted it. Or maybe we just don't have enough horses in this kind of sphere. But good old Pic Dory is here at and a very short price to land the odds here. We've got Marital, who's more of an upcoming type for Venetia Williams, Unexpected Party, and Hitman, another one for Paul Nicholls. But maybe TC will come back to you. Just in general, not really a betting race, you have to say.
No, not a betting race. Though I'm going to say I think this is pretty simple. I think Pic D'Orhy will win. Do I want to bet him at 1-2? No, but I don't think it's bad value as such. I just think that I don't want to be risking quite a hefty bet at 1-2 when the reward just isn't there on a horse like Pic D'Orhy, who I haven't really trusted throughout his career. I think 1-2 is about the right price, though. He has that kind of stranglehold over this field, in my opinion. So it's not a bad value bet. It's just he's a short price, and maybe he's one for the Accas if anyone wants to take advantage of an Acca boost or something like that. He's got £10 in hand of Martator. On official figures, I think he has to give him £2 or something. So he's £8 in hand of that horse. He actually comes out worse at the weights with Hitman, but Hitman's just completely untrustworthy. He doesn't go through with his effort. He's a strong traveller, doesn't find anything off the bridle. You just can't bet Hitman ever for my money. So Pic D'Orhy is definitely the horse for me. He won this in 2023, finished second last year, beaten by Banbridge. That form received a huge boost in the King George. And this is kind of his track and trip. So I expect they're going to get him out early, go straight to the front, jump well, and make all.
Yeah, and that's what he did at Ascot last time, where he put up a pretty good performance, as he would do, and again a fairly mediocre race for the grade 2 level at Ascot last time. Ross, he just sort of is able to find these opportunities, isn't he? Paul Nicholls with Pic D'Orhy, just these 4 runner races. I think this time last year we had the likes of Banbridge, as TC mentioned. Is there something in here that's going to show him that, you know, his rating of 161 is probably a bit stale at this stage, and there's something that probably can reach his level, or is it just going to be a bit of a procession?
Yeah, I mean, it's all well and good us throwing our arms in the air. We've only got 5 Gold Cup horses. We can't get a decent field in a grade 2. You know, let's shoot the crocodile closest to the boat. I disagree with both of you, actually. I was really disappointed by Pic D'Orhy last time. He was rated £27 superior to Hidden Depths, beaten 3.5 lengths. Now, beaten with more value than 3.5 lengths, but he didn't just cant around and waltz up. I was really disappointed with him. I thought he looked a bit surly. I thought he looked a bit moody. I thought his jumping didn't look as electric as it could do. Okay, he's entitled to step forward for that first start of the year, but he's going to get onto testing ground. That's perhaps not going to help his jumping. We have to mention that Paul Nicholls' yard is not exactly firing on all cylinders. He is the most logical winner, but I thought 1-2, I wanted to go against him, particularly when I can get 4-1 about Martator, who came up short last time trying to go for the 6-timer. That was at this track on lively ground over 2 miles. He just got taken off his feet early, as plenty of horses did over Christmas at Kempton. Still stuck on, finished third. You know, it wasn't an awful effort. He's proven at this trip. He's proven on heavy ground at Newbury, albeit in a lower grade. I think this extra trip will help him get into his rhythm. Smaller field will suit him. And when you look at his form, he was very strong through the line, both times over 2 mile 4. I think the fact that he's been able to do what he did at Ascot over 2 mile 1 at the start of the season suggests he's improving. So yes, he's got to find a little bit, but at 4-1 in a 4-runner field, and you can, like TC said, you can't trust Hitman. Unexpected Party is there in a bid that the handicapper will bite and drop them a few pounds so they can try and win the Grand Annual again. It's a 2-horse race. I've got question marks over Pic D'Orhy from what he did last time, whether the ground will suit the yard stable. So I thought 4-1, I'd be prepared to take my chance and hope that Martator improves the step up in trip and handles the ground.
Yeah, I think that was the one element that I was thinking of asking. You've touched on it, is the ground with Pic D'Orhy. Yes, he does have sort of softer ground form going back a while, but he's not getting any younger now. He's had another bout of wind surgery. Just, I think we'll test him and also test his ability just to get through it. He seemed like he was. He seemed recently he's a better horse on better ground.
Yeah, and just his jumping, Harry Cobden's very good on him. You just got to keep your hands off your neck and just try and keep his front end up to a fence. Obviously, when you're sinking into the ground, you know, 2, 3, maybe more inches, that's going to automatically pull them onto their forehand, onto their head. That's going to make it harder, particularly in the early stages, just to get pictorially balanced and organised. So I don't think his jumping, which is normally a weapon, like you say, on good ground, don't think it'll be such a weapon, and I think that can level things up a little bit.
Okay, so we've got Pic D'Orhy 2-1 on. TC thinks is a good bet, whereas Ross thinks Martator's got a bit more value in it here, and that horse currently 4-1. So as both think it's a trappy old affair, and probably it is between the two of them there. We'll move on to probably the best betting race we have, the Lanzarote Handicap Hurdle. That comes up, the penultimate race of the day at Kempton at 2 mile 5 furlongs, and very pleased to see that we've got a max field size of 20 here, and the race is sort of shaped by the horse that ran very well in it last year, ran third. That's Impulse Trois at 11-2. Nicky Henderson and James Bowen, who keeps the ride, beat the Batters 8-1. Ilva de Soir is 8-1. Gypco 8-1. Night of Allen 10-1. Dolly the Great 14-1. Punta del Esta 14-1. Down Levant 16-1. As is Fast Dream and Georgie Girl and Good Luck Charm, and sort of you kind of pick a price for a lot of them. 11-2, the field makes it very intriguing. I like the look of it. It's just whether who's going to really stay and see out the 2 mile and 5 furlongs on this testing going conditions. TC, that's really what I was thinking of, because there's a lot of horses that are just trying their arm at intermediate trip, but they're going to have to really stay on what is a flat track, and it is a track that it sort of really brings out the speed in horses. But if we've got borderline heavy ground, that's going to be the main element here.
Yeah, and they tend to get racing down the side of the track at Kempton as well. So it's not just when they swing into the home straight, it's quite early. Because it is such a flat track, most of these jockeys on horses with proven stamina go forward, and they try to make the most of it by kicking for home early and taking the speed out of some of their rivals. So yeah, I think stamina is key. But what a great betting race, as you've already talked about. This is undoubtedly the best race of the whole day, probably worldwide actually, for a punt. And there are plenty that you can have on your shortlist. I had the likes of Beat the Bat, Good Luck Charm, Impositoire, of course. A couple of bigger prices as well, including Georgie Girl. All of those are very interesting horses, but I ended up coming down on Ilva de Soir. I'm hoping to get a little bit better than 7-8-1, maybe hopefully 10-1. I think that'd be a good each way price on this horse. He just feels like he's been targeted at this race by Harry Derham, who's very, very good at placing his horses. Obviously, he's had issues with his gallops at the start of this season, and wasn't really able to get his horses ready for their early season campaigns. There was actually, I think it was a month period where he didn't have a runner as well because of the situation at home. But now it's all back and sorted, and fortunately his horses are running well. I love the booking of Harry Cobden. I think not only is that a big jockey upgrade, and that's not anything meant towards Alice Stevens, it's more of a fact that Harry's just one of the better jockeys in the country. Not only is that a jockey upgrade, but it also is a sign of intent that Harry's decided to book Harry on Ilva de Soir here. I know that Paul O'Brien would generally get the choice, and he's on Darjanini, but he usually rides Darjanini, whereas he doesn't usually ride Ilva de Soir. So I don't think that would have been an option there. It's just we're going to put Cobden now on board instead of Alice Stevens, try and take advantage of this mark that he's currently got. He's very lightly raced. He's only had the 9 outings under rules. He's clearly been like a longer term prospect as well. If you look back at his early career form, he was taking money in his races. He was going off relatively short prices, but he just wasn't firing. Now, last year in April, he was better, much better. It looked like something was clicking with this horse, and he racked up back-to-back successes at Chepstow, Uttoxeter. And that run at Cheltenham on his comeback was way better than the actual position suggests. I mean, not only was it a red-hot handicap at Cheltenham, won by Double Powerful, who's he was super in form at the start of the season, but also he's coming back off the layoff. He shaped really well into the race, and coming towards the second last, he looked the most logical winner before just taking a blow between the second last and the last, and then staying on well again up the hill. I think his mark of 1-2-2 is very fair, and with Derham getting his horses back in form, I think Ilva de Soir is a good play here.
Okay, and confident that he'll be okay on the ground. We haven't got a huge amount of form where he's been tested on it, but he's a beautifully bred, French-bred horse that seemingly it's worth a try. He might be one that will be okay, where others definitely we aren't certain about.
Yeah, it is still a question mark, of course, but his pedigree suggests it should be fine. And if Harry thinks he can run on this ground, then I do too.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. As you say, Harry Derham had right nightmare back in, when was it, Storm Bert. We've had the weirdest weather globally. We can see that how much this weather is affecting us, but his whole gallop was completely affected and flooded, and he's reinstalled one, and he had to box up horses to take them to Lambourne and bring them back. But now he's got a new all-weather gallop, which means that he's able to get them out and firing again, as you say. So Ilvar de Soir will be an important winner for him if he does come through for us and TC. Okay, Ross, this race has got a few old favourites in here, and I wasn't too surprised when I saw one of them creep up as one of your selections, because I'll let you go ahead and tell us why. But the horse in question has been a horse that you've been pretty close to, and I feel like you probably will have his opportunity at one point. But why do you think it will be this time?
Well, yeah, I mean, let's hope we get a run for starters. I'll just take you through why I went against a few. Impositoire, I thought he got outstayed last year on better ground, off a £7 lower mark. I don't see how he's going to return that. And he's been a non-runner for the stable on heavy ground. He's been taken out on heavy ground, so I'm not sure they think that suits. Beat the Bat, you have to have concerns over Harry Fry's yard. He's without a winner in 20 days. He only had 9 runners in that time. That tells you that he's obviously been fighting against something, and you have to say Beat the Bat's form hasn't really worked out. Behind Dysart Enos last year, she's yet to really go on. Steel Ally, last time he was pulled up on his next start, so I could go against him. There was a couple on the shortlist I liked. I liked Zipko. I thought he was really good at Newbury. £8 higher mark, but if the wind up has done the job and allows him to be a little bit more consistent, that's always been the problem with him. Punta del Este, Knight of Allen, and Cam Sinis, I think they all looked at Haydock like they'd appreciate a step up in trip and slightly more testing ground. Cam Sinis is one I will probably have a small punt on. I really like him as a horse. I think he's not done with yet. But my 2 selections are 2 old favourites, really. Donny the Great. I mean, rinse and repeat. I think I've put him up twice in the last 2 weeks. He didn't really get much of a run at Kempton. He got wiped out at the start. Obviously, it was called off last time. But just to reiterate, if you haven't watched the pod before, second in the Great Wood off a mark of 131, staying very strongly. Fourth in the Betfair on heavy ground over 2 miles off a mark of 132. Again, catching the eye, staying very strongly, suffering a little bit of trouble in running. You can put a line through his run in the Coral Hurdle at Cheltenham because the yard was out of form, and I think you could apply that to Ayr at the back end of the year. He made an appalling chase debut. He just didn't jump. It was to his testament that he still looked like he might play a hander at one point. He's down to a mark of 129 for doing precious little wrong over hurdles. He's a course and distance winner, albeit on better ground. He's proven that he copes with soft and testing ground. I just think this is tailor-made for him. I have no issue at all with the stamina. I think he's really well handicapped off this mark. Nicky Henderson absolutely kicking along, 25% strike rate. Nico de Boinville on board knows him really well. So I thought he had outstanding credentials, 14-1 each way play for me. I thought looked fair. And then Titan Discovery, who was also really like last year. Robbie Llewellyn came on the Tuesday pod at the beginning of last season and gave him as a novice hurdler to follow. Didn't fail to deliver. He won twice. He only missed the frame twice last season. And the first one was actually in a novice hurdle where he perhaps wasn't fully tuned up. His 2 best pieces of form have probably come when being beaten. He was behind Ginkgo Blue, who's now rated 149. They were a long way clear of the third, Alfie's Princess, who's rated 121. That was at Sandown. And then at Kempton, he ran really well, finishing second again finishing very strongly. That was behind Boom Bourne. He's rated 141. Even when you factor in the fact that Boom Bourne was giving him £9, it still looks like a horse that's capable of running to a mark better than 123 that he lines up here off. I thought Cheltenham, his final run of the season, he finished 6th. He was only beaten 2 lengths. I think the ground was lively enough for him over that trip, and he did get quite a bit of traffic on the home turn and up the home straight. He had a run at Chepstow at the start of the season. Robbie had said that he was very conscious of having had his first full season last year and really hit the ground running. He wanted to try and train them this year to see out their season a little bit more, so they weren't as revved up for their first start of the season. He then suffered a little bit with the health of the yard. I spoke to him this morning. He said they're in much better order. He's really happy with them. He has no issues with the ground. The trip for this horse, he says, is very competitive, but he does think there's still a bit of room to work with in the mark of 123. So that just boosted my confidence, really. So those were my 2 against field. He's 25-1 Titan Discovery. I thought that was a big price.
Yeah, absolutely. Really interesting, that insight about Robbie Llewellyn, because he's a name to follow. Certainly someone has got a really, really good hunger for the game, but obviously got right head in his shoulders when you say happy to be a bit quieter. There weren't that many winners at all before the new year, but December, a couple of winners came through, and it'll be really interesting to see how this half of the season works for him, and especially having a few bugs or whatever it had been. So Titan Discovery horse he's always thought very highly of, and a very decent price in a race which is has been kind to those looking outside the obvious. It wasn't too long ago that Bourne Bill won at 66 to 1. He had JJ Riley last year winning at 33 to 1. I wasn't really going to do a selection for this race, but I just wanted to mention a couple in here. Georgie Girl, Philip Hobbs and Johnson White can't do anything wrong. They had 3 winners yesterday at Taunton. They've just been mowing through the Christmas period into now on such a good level. 10 winners from the last 22 runners. Georgie Girl's just quite an interesting sort. Potentially might just be compromised by the ground, and is a younger sort, but she's certainly coming from a yard going great guns. And the other one is Dan Levant, who I saw at Chepstow on the 27th of the Welsh National Day. Is a 12-year-old, hasn't won since 2021. There's a lot going against him, but I thought the third at Chepstow was a step in the right direction. He stays all day, and he'll be there fighting at the end in the guts of it. So interested to see how that 12-year-old gets on, and they're all big prices in this. And so that's one of the best betting races of the weekend. And we keep our fingers crossed for Kempton that they survive all this cold periods of racing. Racetracks that hopefully will survive the cold periods will be the all-weather tracks, because they're called all-weather for a reason, TC. So I'd imagine that's where you've gone with your Napa Next Best, because we're probably confident that they're going to survive, although I've seen on Racing Admin that Chelmsford are monitoring, Lingfield are monitoring. Please tell me that that's not going to happen, because this is why we sign up to all-weather racing, for the reason that they call themselves all-weather, and this weather will not affect them. So please give us some confidence.
Yeah, well, I hope they're going to race everywhere this week. I mean, tomorrow I'm on Sky Sports Racing on Friday and covering Lingfield and Poe. So if there's no Lingfield, I'm in serious trouble. And then Saturday, yeah, it looks like we're going to need some more weather racing, considering most of the jumps action is going to be called off, or already has been called off. So the reason I'm going for the all-weather on Saturday with my Napa Next Best is purely so I have selections, because otherwise I could just be firing blanks again. And we've already covered a couple at Kempton. So, yeah, all-weather stuff for me for the Napa Next Best. The Nap comes in the evening in the 8:30 at Wolverhampton. It's a horse called Jersey Rocks. Likely to go off favourite, but not a short price. I think probably around 3-4 to 1-ish, around that mark anyway. He's a 4-year-old. He's drastically improved since he's been fitted with blinkers. That only came 2 starts ago, and he's won both of his outings since, coming with big late bursts in both of his runs. Last time he only won by a very small margin, but he was valued for much better than that. Marco Gianni was stuck in a pocket turning for home. Wasn't able to really unleash him until late, but once he did, he exploded and he looked like a horse much better than his mark. This is a race that has plenty of informed types in it, but Jersey Rocks draws well in stall 3. Only gone up £3 for that success, and with the blinkers kept on, I think he can rack up the 3rd consecutive victory. So he's my nap in the 8:30 at Wolves. My next best comes at Newcastle on Saturday in the 2 o'clock, and it's Alpine Sierra. Now, this was absolutely bolted up over the course and distance on December the 12th. So less than a month ago, but basically a month ago since when it gets to Saturday. He's been given 2 absolutely stinking rides since, like terrible rides from Paul Mulrennan. The penultimate outing, he was stuck against the near side rail at Newcastle behind a wall of horses, never came off the bridle and finished 5th. You can see that happen at Newcastle a fair few times due to the crosswind. Everyone tries to get to the near side rail and it can become a problem. So I'm willing to forgive that one, albeit the horse should have won that day. Last time, it was, remarkable. He kept him 10 lengths, 12 lengths back off the pace at the start. The horse was keen, super keen, because they were going slow up front, but Paul decided to be extremely negative on him early. It made no sense. I know he's a closer, but you don't need to be that far back. Because they went slow and it developed into a sprint, all those that were prominent in the early part of the race dominated the finish, and he was just never involved. He closed up a little bit in the latter stage under hands and heels, couldn't get into the race and finished just in mid-pack. But he just looked like a horse who would have gone close if he was ridden better. Now, Paul Mulrennan moves to the other Goldie horse in this race, Midnight Lion, who actually beat Alpine Sierra last time in that slowly run race. Amy Waff gets on Alpine Sierra. taking off £3, I think Alpine Sierra, providing he gets a chance to showcase his stuff, he's got a great opportunity to win in the 2 o'clock at Newcastle. I like the jockey switch, and hopefully he can go close.
Okay, Amy Moore to show Paul Mulrennan how it's done, essentially, on a horse that clearly is deserved a run through to show off what he can do. This interesting selections from the racing that we hope will go on: Jersey Rocks at Wolverhampton, Alpine Sierra at Newcastle at 2 o'clock. That meeting is the one that's been shifted forward, so we definitely can see racing on ITV as well. So I assume, Ross, that's what you're looking forward to this weekend.
Love a bit of all weather. I mean, fair play to TC. That was genuine passion about all weather. I almost got me excited about watching it. No, I've gone on the basis that hopefully Kempton will get on. We call them Naps and Next Best. I would just caveat that by saying they're not as strong as I would normally be as a Nap and Next Best, but I do think they're two interesting selections. The first, let's call it the Nap, in the 210 is Ansam for Evan Williams. He's a real favourite on this podcast. He's had two very quiet hurdle runs this season, in October and November, after returning for 545 days off. His last chase start, he finished 10th in the 2023 Bet365 Gold Cup. I don't think that test suited him. Big field, lots of jumping. He does struggle with his rhythm, but the handicap has given him a chance. He's back down to his last winning mark of 142. He's at his best on a small field, right-handed track, bit of cut in the ground. He's going to get that here. There's a dead 8. I think he's going to be a good double-figure price. I think he's got a really nice each-way chance if he still retains his ability. And I just, looking at the two hurdle runs, I think they were very much built around bringing him forward and bringing him back to peak fitness on a racecourse rather than at home. So I thought Ansam in the 210 was really interesting. And then the other one is in the 135, it's Hugh Briscoe for Harry Derham. His next Mullins horse, he had 463 days off before making his debut, again over hurdles for Harry Derham. Was never in it at Newbury, ridden out the back, ridden cold. It was definitely a run, again designed to bring a horse forward for his fitness. His last start from us, and he didn't have a lot of runs for Willie Mullins. He wasn't overly exposed. He won a beginner's chase, was given a rating of 137. The runner-up, who was 13 lengths behind, is now rated 134. And yet the British handicapper has let him in here off the mark of 134. Johnny Burke is on, but as TC pointed out, very often with Paul O'Brien's got horses that he's really associated with, and Psycho is a horse that I've seen them say previously Paul O'Brien gets on really well with and has figured out his jumping. So I think wouldn't read too much into the jockey booking there. I think Paul O'Brien has been put on Psycho as opposed to choosing him. The trip is a minor concern. He won over 2 miles 7 on his last start. This is a drop back in trip. The ground is no concern whatsoever. He could just be a very well handicapped horse on his second start for Harry Derham, who does a really good job. Ed Bailey, as Bloodstock agent, does a really nice job of recruiting these horses as well. He does think a little bit left field and looks under some sort of dark rocks and pulls out these horses. So Hubrisco is really interesting in 135. And then just one other horse I'd mention in the 224 at Foss Lass, and we don't have declarations for that because it's been last minute put on, so we get declarations tomorrow. Lemoncello in the 224. When Charlie Deutsch on the podcast, I really startled him by asking him for a selection from left field of a horse to follow. And with a bit of thinking, he came up with Lemoncello, said he might not be winning immediately, but as a horse to follow. He hasn't won immediately. He's in a mark of 119 now. He goes up in trip. He's had a few entries lately with a claimer on. I think that'll be the same case again. Slow ground, Foss Lass, 2 miles 7. He could just be a Venetia Williams typical type of horse for a Saturday.
Okay, thank you, Ross. And that's another plug for Miller's Movers and all the special guests that you get on. And Charlie Deutsch's episode is definitely worth watching. Just at any stage of the season, I think it's kind of a timeless piece to listen to him and hear about his riding and the confidence he has working with Venetia Williams. It's really, really interesting insight there. Thank you to TC and to Ross. I'll just add my from Midnight Today in the Dan Moore. I've got Pacifist in the 4:15 at Newcastle. Sean D. Bowen's on board for Charlie Johnson. It's daughter of Australia. I saw her run at Kempton. She's a very good-looking filly, and she's a type that's definitely going to be one for the sort of the more middle distance type of races. But she's up to winning this race. She was just beaten in the neck by Nanny Park, who had a bit more experience than her at Kempton last time, where she attempted to make all, which I'm sure she'll try and do at Newcastle. She had one of these horses bake out behind her. There's a bit of guesswork to do with some of the others in terms of there's 3 newcomers and then a 4-year-old who's got to carry 10 stone in here. So Pacifist off 8.5, I think she's going to be probably pretty short. She's definitely up to this. I've been waiting to see her out again, and looking forward to seeing how she gets on in the 4:15. So we keep our fingers crossed that we have a bit of racing. If I looked outside, I would think it's a beautiful, sunny, glorious day, but I look at the temperature gauge and it's still -4. So I hope that the racing down south is a bit better than where I am in the Midlands. Keep warm, everyone. I'm certain that we're going to have racing over at Fairyhouse for the SBK sponsored days. The Dan and Joan Moore Memorial Chase is the one that we focused on, and SBK, as I mentioned, are offering that 25% winnings boost. And if there's more racing on, you've got that Saturday Racing ACCA boost, 20% ACCA boost there. 4 legs opt-in is required. Don't forget that if you are a new SBK user, you get £40 in free bets when you sign up and bet £10 for the first time. You can head to SBK for lots of other offers and promotions. And let's hope we've got some racing to review next week and more racing to preview. And we're out of this cold slumber. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.